These are good questions. I think today is a big day. It's a big day for Cub fans. It's a big day for the organization. Introducing the manager considered to be one of the top 2 or 3 in Major League Baseball. They're going out and they poached him from the Brewers. You weakened your rival and you strengthened your dugout. You strengthened the brain power in your organization. This is a huge day for the Cubs. I think Craig Counsell is going to be who he is. He's not going to try to be anything he's not. That's the beauty of Craig Counsell. He is not a phony. He's not a pretender. He's not a performer. He is the smartest guy in the room. He may act like it sometimes, but you know why? Because he's right more times than not. This is a guy that's going to come across in a way that is professional, that is cerebral, but also is relatable. He is somebody that, as you heard over the weekend on Inside the Clubhouse, his agent described him, and you knew this would resonate with me. He's the kind of guy that walks his dog in the neighborhood, will talk to the neighbors, and still can outthink you in the dugout. And that's who he is. What will he say today that will make fans enthusiastic or speak to that? Probably just the fact that he's willing to work with the front office, that he's going to be an extension of the front office, but he's also going to be his own man and make his own decisions. I don't think you're going to see a lot of lineups that they're necessarily, head scratchers. And I think that what we'll hear today maybe is reinforcing this idea that every game matters. Even the odd Tuesday in June or the Sunday throwaway game in early May, when you lose in April, they still count. And I think Craig Counsell has managed the Brewers in that way. And you'll hear the way that he talks about just being a leader and being a manager, getting more out of less. And he did that with the Brewers, and he'll say that without insulting his former team or his former players. This is an exciting day for Cub fans, and I can't wait to hear what he has to say.
I agree with everything you just said, David. Home run, touch them all. Nice job.
Yeah. I got to tell you, I think that the final question there, how much say will he have on the roster? I'd like him to be asked that question. I'd like to know that. And I think that we all know exactly what's wrong with the Cubs. Aside from player acquisitions and who's coming back and who's going and how you're going to handle everything now that you've lost one starting pitcher at the top of the rotation. And they've said they're not bringing him back, right? Marcus Stroman. So I think that the questions are fairly obvious. But I want to know what's going on with the bullpen. What is his take on the bullpen? That is one of the real problems that they had. And then I want to know how you improve scoring with runners in scoring position. How do you improve that? What are you going to do with this roster that you have to make sure that they get their share of runs batted in when guys are in position? Because that fell apart at the end of the year and was difficult to watch. They were getting guys on base. They just weren't knocking them in. So that has to do with the batting order. That has to do with all of the little annoying things that people were arguing about. I think those two issues are really huge. And I want to know if his influence with Jed or his agreement with Jed includes his getting to pick the players on the roster.
That's a good question. I think I would look forward to that answer. Dustin, how do you think he will address the elephant in the room, if you will, the lack of postseason success, the postseason record, which a lot of people have introduced as, well, how good is Craig Counsell? Look at his postseason record. How do you think he'll answer that?
I honestly, I don't think he'll be asked. He should be asked, but I don't think
that's a fair question to ask him, though, right?
Totally a fair question, but it's also the first day, and so whoever does decide to ask that question is already going to be on his list. He's not going to want to talk about that, and the Cubs don't want him to be talking. This is supposed to be a celebration day. Positive. But
you could word that in a way that is not threatening or sound
like David, I totally agree with you. Yeah. I think it's a fair question. It's a question that we all want to know. I think every Cubs fan out there wants to know, but it's not a question that he's going to want to answer.
It's an easy answer. You just say, well, I believe that with all of the extra resources we'll be given here in Chicago, we'll be able to go out and get a higher level playoff performer type player that can help us in that. I think the simple reality, Dustin, is that the players that he managed overachieved during the regular season, and then when you get in the playoffs, they didn't have another level to jump to. I think he's a guy that got players to play at a very high level.
I think that's a really good answer, and I don't know that he would offer that one because it might sound like he's demeaning his own talent.
But there might be a way.
There is a way
of saying that.
And I think he would be able to find that way if he's asked a question. And I think it's a fair enough question. He's like, Craig, you come here reputed as one of the top managers in baseball. We know you're being paid that way. Well, how would you respond to some of the critics who still look at your postseason record and say, is it really worth it? Is that offensive?
That's not offensive. That's a good
I think it's a great question. I would, if I had a bet, and I like to bet, if you listen to this show, I would bet that question is more likely to be asked during Bernstein, Holmes, and Rahimi than the first press conference that you'll hear on the score.
Fair enough. Might be right. It might not be. There's a lot of pomp and circumstances probably.
Is Jason Leisure not going to Hallis Hall today? Is he going to Wrigley?
And later this morning, we will air Craig Counsell's introductory news conference live at 10 a.m. Bernstein, Holmes, and Layla Rahimi will be a part of our team coverage. So we'll be broadcasting that live at Wrigley Field from 10 to 2. You'll hear everything that is asked of him and what he has to say. And then Craig will jump on with Dan and Lawrence and Layla. And then we'll be able to hear their follow-up questions to the sorts of things that people were afraid to ask, according to Dustin. And that's coming up on 670 The Score, sponsored by your local Chicago and Northwest Indiana Hyundai dealers.
Big day. Going to be a lot of fun here on the station and at Wrigley Field.
All right. We've got a lot to talk about. 312-644-6767. Is there any way that Craig Counsell doesn't win the news conference? I mean, I can't imagine him saying anything other than, I really hate it here. That would actually help him. He'd have to have a meltdown beyond meltdown. He's too bright to do that. But is there anything you definitely want to hear? And is there anything that might annoy you? It's Mully and Haugh, Chicago Sports Radio, 670 The Score.